You are Locked On Cougars. Welcome into your Monday edition of the show. Hope you guys had a fantastic Easter and a happy Easter to all of you. We've got plenty to cover ahead on today's show. We're talking about college football power index. Yes, numbers, how they might relate to BYU football's fortunes this fall. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about the latest in BYU basketball, recruiting a new commit over the weekend, albeit with a different backstory than most. And obviously, we'll catch you guys up on everything that's happening in BYU football, as well as beginning our countdown. Yes, 100 days roughly to BYU football, not counting weekends. We'll start to count that down as well. So we got a lot to get to ahead on today's show. So without further ado, let's get rolling. This is the Locked On Cougars podcast for April 18th, 2022.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, my friends? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. I work for the Zone Sports Network in Salt Lake City, Utah, as the executive producer of DJ and PK in the Morning. And a huge thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. We are very proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, the motto is your team every day. And as such, this is your only daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Many have tried, but few have succeeded in this sphere, and appreciate you guys taking the time to check us out. All right, getting going here on today's show. First off, you notice I'm not wearing a hat today. Had some comments recently wondering if I'm going bald, and my wife actually brought it up. I've been wearing hats on all the shows we've done on YouTube so far. So those of you listening to this in the regular podcast form are like, what are you talking about, Hatch? Regardless, I decided, you know what? I might as well show off. I still got my hair. So, you're still having fun with this. But regardless, a big thank you for your support. All right, getting going here on today's show. Let's talk about numbers and how numbers might indicate how BYU is going to fare this fall. Now, some of you probably know what these are. They're called the ESPN Football Power Indexes, and the FPI is what it is. Football Percentages Index, I believe, is what it stands for, if I'm not mistaken. And what it means is the definition of the FPI that ESPN utilizes, and I'm reading this off of the website here, so I apologize. I'm kind of flying off the cuff today. It was a busy day with Easter. Normally, I'm a lot more prepared, so we're very much going by the seat of the pants today. So if eyes are all over the place, bear with me. But the definition from FPI is the expected point margin versus an average opponent on a neutral field. So BYU going into the 2022 season, the initial FPI that ESPN put out has BYU with a 5.1, meaning BYU beat an average opponent by 5 points on a neutral field. 5.1 overall puts BYU inside the top 50 in college football in the first ratings index here for ESPN going into the 2022 season, with the Cougars checking in at number 46. Now, that is not their ranking where they say BYU is the number 46 team in the country. They just say BYU's FPI has the number 46 out of the 131 teams in college football. Now, let's talk about where BYU is projected to sit with regards to that 5.1 FPI. Now, as you go through this list, we're going to go through each of these teams here. The rankings, you have to put them head to head to find out the FPI and the numbers that it goes into it. It'd take way too long. I'd have to go through like 3 different episodes to break down all those numbers for you guys. So the easiest way to do this, I felt like, was essentially tell you where BYU's opponents this fall, where they check in on the FPI. And in essence, if BYU's rating is lower than the team they're facing, that team's favored to beat them. Is that simple enough? So there you go. Starting off, USF Bulls have an FPI ranking of number 90. So BYU is number 46. Well, in theory, they should take care of USF. Then they face off against 2 teams who actually have higher rankings than them. That is the Baylor Bears, who are at number 19 in the initial FPI ratings, as well as a road game at the Oregon Ducks with a number 23 rating. So if you're just going by the FPI, BYU is expected to start the year 1-2. Following that, Wyoming's number 94 and Utah State is number 88. So that would put BYU 3-2. Then you have the big game against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is extremely highly thought of in the FPI here. Number 5. Yes, you heard that right. Number 5. So they project BYU at the midway point of the season. If you go, once again, by these numbers, just the FPI ratings, BYU should be 3-3. Then they face off against Arkansas, who is number 29. So it should be 3-4. Then Liberty, East Carolina, they are 76 and 78. So that put BYU at 5-4. Boise State is just behind BYU at number 47, so that's more of a toss-up. It's a road game at Boise State with the number 47 ranking. Dixie State / Utah Tech does not count. They don't count FCS teams, so it's an NA there, so BYU should win that game. And then Stanford is number 61. So if you're just going by the sheer numbers, BYU is projected to be 8-4 in these with these ratings. That is what BYU is projected to be. Now, the interesting part about this, and we'll talk about the Big 12 as a whole real quick, where BYU checks in at, but according to the FPI, how they put the numbers all together, the FPI actually predicts a 7-5 record for BYU. It's a 7.0 wins against 5.0 wins. They actually can go 0.1, 0.2 on those wins. It's kind of a weird concept, but they're projecting a 7-5 record, just surely going by the numbers. Now, I have talked about the FPI in past episodes of this podcast in the last couple of years, and BYU has surpassed pretty much all those FPI numbers, especially during the 2020 season. So I'm of the opinion that the 7-5 mark here that is being projected for BYU, I'm not buying into it. I am of the opinion that 9 wins is the benchmark BYU needs to surpass in the 2022 season. Double-digit wins for the third straight year would be a huge, huge accomplishment for BYU as they get ready to go into the Big 12 in 2023 and beyond. The BYU is going to obviously have to take care of business because you have some really high-name opponents, most notably that Baylor, Oregon, and then Arkansas, Notre Dame matchups in back-to-back weeks. Those 4 games where they're in back-to-back weeks will make or break BYU's perception this season. Could BYU split those games and go 10-2? Absolutely. But if you were to go 0-4 against those teams, man, how different does the season feel if they win the other 8 games, but you lose maybe your top 4 matchups? It's just so weird how college football can be. And it's just, you look at it and you say, okay, what would we being the collective we, all of us out there, BYU fans, media, administrators, coaching staff, players themselves, what is the collective we? What is your projection that you want to accomplish that will make you satisfied? I think for most BYU fans, and feel free to let me know, if you guys think differently on this, I'd love nothing more than for you guys to weigh in on this. But I think that 9 wins, I think that is the over-under for BYU. If you go over that, great. You're 10-plus wins, life's good. Under that, I think BYU fans are going to be fairly disappointed. 9-3, it's probably sitting right there. Okay, yeah, that was a decent season. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 8, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 11. But let me know what you think. We talked about that writer last week from Saturday Blitz who thinks BYU is going 11-1. So there's a lot out there to track with regards to BYU. But the one other thing I want to project real quick is where would BYU at number 46 in the FPI check in at in the new Big 12? So there's going to be the 14 teams that BYU will be in with the Big 12 beginning in 2023. Well, of the 14 teams in these FPI rankings, BYU is in the back half of the Big 12. That's actually a bit surprising to me because a lot of folks out there, a lot of naysayers, as I like to call them, about BYU would like you to think that the Big 12 is going to be nothing more than the glorified G5 conference when BYU enters it. Well, the good news is apparently they think highly of the Big 12 overall because BYU at number 46 is number 10. Texas Tech, who's number 11, is just behind them at number 48. Houston's right there at 49, and West Virginia is at number 52. So 13 of the 14 teams in the Big 12 are inside the top 52 in the country. That is in the top half of the sport. The only outlier, Kansas at number 97. And we all know that Kansas is in a multi-year rebuild. They have hit the reset button so many times over the past decade. It's going to be hard for them to really, I think, jump up as high as they probably want to be and aspire to be at some point. But the Big 12, man, BYU number 10 out of 14, the highest ranked team, crazily enough, in the Big 12. You're probably thinking, okay, it's got to be Baylor. No, it's got to be Oklahoma. No, it is Texas. They think the Texas Longhorns are the number 16. The FPI projects Texas as the number 6 team. Crazy to me to think about that because Texas, what have they done in the past decade and a half that's really of note? Since the 2009 national championship, they haven't done much of anything since Mac Brown was prowling the sidelines. Guess what? He's been prowling the sidelines in North Carolina for 4 years now after retiring from Texas, due in part to Taysom Hill, sending him into an early retirement in most people's eyes. But regardless, some things for BYU to accomplish. I think 7-5 is far too low for BYU. I'll be frank. I think 9 wins. I think that is the benchmark. That's the over-under I'm projecting for BYU. Maybe if I were an odds maker, I'd put it at 9.5 and say, okay, put your money on this. more or less, 9.5 wins. Let me know what you think. Locked On Cougars on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can search me out, my personal Twitter feed, Jacob C. Hatch. And as always, you can reach out to us via email, lockedonbyu@gmail.com. Always love hearing from you guys and getting your thoughts on all things BYU. All right, coming up here in just a moment, we'll flip over to BYU basketball just for a bit. Need to talk about some of the latest when it comes to the transfer portal. What's going on with recruiting? BYU added a big man who will be joining BYU when they are in the Big 12. He's going to go on a mission, but we'll talk about what his background is and why his scholarship situation for BYU a little more unique than most. We'll get to all of that here momentarily. First, though, today's show is brought to you in part by our friends over at Built Bar. Of course, Built Bars are the best tasting protein bars that I have ever had. You see that nice little graphic right up there as we start off this ad read. I want you guys to try the Puffs, though. If you've not tried the Puffs, you have not been trying the best thing that maybe Built Bar has ever come up with. And I mean this sincerely. I am a huge fan of the Built Bars themselves. They are the best tasting protein bars that I've ever had, but the Built Puffs are absolutely incredible. They are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. Hey, it's Easter. You probably had some peeps or something like that. Think about that type of a deal, but healthy for you guys and packed with protein. They're not just a protein bar. They are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They are a fan favorite with incredible flavors from yummy cinnamony churro, which is absolutely phenomenal, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. Yes, the banana cream pie, folks, is my favorite puff flavor. So good. They are going to be your new favorite. I promise you, you will absolutely love them. I think they're fantastic. Give them a shot. Go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15 while you're there. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. You heard that right. Promo code LOCKED15 at built.com. Try the puffs, try the Built Bars. Enjoy them all. That's our good friends over at Built Bar. All right, time to talk some BYU basketball recruiting now. Let's start off with some good news over the weekend. That coming in the form of a commitment from Adam Stewart. 6'11" big man playing for the RSL Academy. And you're probably wondering, okay, Real Salt Lake. And by the way, I'm wearing a Kyle Beckerman shirt. It was not planned this way, but regardless, Adam Stewart is officially committed to the BYU basketball program, and he's got great measurables. 6'11", a 3-star prospect according to ESPN's prospect ratings. 7'2" wingspan. Had some decent numbers at the Real Salt Lake Academy, which is still, I know it's a soccer academy, but they have a thriving basketball scene going on. He's a very, very talented player, but he's a smart dude at that. He's actually going to come to BYU, and Robbie McCombs from Vanquish the Foe lifted the lid on this. He's actually going to be a walk-on to the BYU men's basketball program because he will be on an academic scholarship when he gets to BYU. He has a 4.0 GPA, props, 34 ACT, okay, double props. Oh, and by the way, just a cool 1540 on his SAT. Man, this dude is one smart cookie, and obviously with those measurables, you're taking a chance on this. He's already received a mission call for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is headed to the Paris, France mission. He will return to play for BYU in 2024 and beyond. That is what is projected as. According to Vanquish the Foe's piece, he's been recruited by BYU since he was in 7th grade, starting way back when Dave Rose and former assistant Tim Lacombe were recruiting him. I actually have to ask Coach Lacombe about this. I work with him over at the Zone Sports Network. He will leave for his mission on July 25th and ostensibly will be returning in time for that 2024-2025 season. Now, this is not, I think, a commitment that is going to make people say, oh my goodness, BYU is just rocking and rolling. Because as we said, this is a kid who's going to be a walk-on for the BYU men's basketball program, but he will be on an academic scholarship. So he doesn't take up an athletic scholarship, but if he pans out and he actually turns into a decent player, because he's got great measurables. As I said, 6'11", 7'2" wingspan. He played at a very high level. That Real Salt Lake Academy team, remember Watch Academy, who's produced all kinds of talent for BYU in recent years. The RSL Academy is on its way to doing just that. Dave Evans, many of you might remember that name as the former head coach of the Wasatch Academy. Well, he was hired to begin the Real Salt Lake Academy. He's doing a lot of good things. So Stewart, 6'11", 7'2" wingspan, averaged just over 10 points a game for RSL Academy this past year. I think they could do a lot worse than this in terms of their recruiting moving forward as a basketball program for BYU, but they're also looking at a high-level guard that has Big 12 experience, and that is an athlete by the name of Coastal Carolina point guard Rudy Williams. He announced the top 8 yesterday, and BYU is one of the schools listed in his top 8 along with UConn, Cal, San Diego State, Butler, George Mason, Wichita State, and Xavier. So this is going to be a very hotly contested recruitment for Rudy Williams, but he started his career at the JUCO ranks, played 1 year at Kansas State, so he has played in the Big 12, and then he transferred to Coastal Carolina this past year. Decent size for a point guard, 6'2", averaged 14.7 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 3.7 assists this past year. But the more important numbers for him at Coastal Carolina, speaking of Williams, is this: 51% shooting overall from the floor. That's a great number. The better number, 45% from three. This is a guy who can light it up from the perimeter. We all know that BYU was starved for consistent outside shooting. Apparently, Rudy Williams would help be a big part of the answer for BYU in terms of getting them a bona fide three-point shooter and a threat from beyond the arc that is consistent, because he did this over an entire season. 45%. That's Alex Barcelo type numbers. And obviously, Coastal Carolina, it's a mid-major conference similar to what the WCC is. So I think a lot of this projects. The only concern with Rudy Williams that I see, and they also pointed this out, Ryvan McCombs at Vanquish the Foe did, he only has 1 year of eligibility. There are many people out there, and I'm one of them, who thinks that BYU right now, if you're going to be looking in the transfer portal, you need to get guys who have 2 or 3 years of eligibility so you can get some continuity built with guys going into the Big 12. Rudy Williams would never play in the Big 12 because he would, in theory, play in the final year of BYU in the West Coast Conference. I am still of the opinion, if you can land a kid of this caliber, absolutely take him. I have said it. I've talked to enough people that BYU is planning on taking at least one big man and one guard in the transfer portal if they can find the right fit. Rudy Williams appears to check all the boxes, I think, for a guard. And I also heard that, and I've said this on the podcast, they want a high-level wing who can score and make their own luck and kind of get their own buckets when they need to. Well, Rudy Williams, if he can create off the dribble and score on his own, maybe he's kind of that double whammy. He's a wing, but he's also a guard who can handle the ball, and he creates that own shot. I don't know that necessarily it's the perfect answer with regards to having that combo, but at the minimum, if he can shoot 45% for Coastal Carolina, he can bring even a 40+% shooting percentage from three for BYU should he pick the Cougars. That would be a huge pickup for BYU. They absolutely need guys like this because we all saw it last year. The lack of offense, the lack of ability to hit threes in consistent stretches for the majority of the season, it doomed BYU. It was something they absolutely are starved for, and they need to find better shooting. Rudy Williams will go a long way towards that. There's also a lot of intrigue out there with regards to a mysterious 4-star prospect that BYU is chasing. I have been looking, and before you guys ask, I do not have a name at this current time. If I find out who it is, I'll be happy to pass it along to you guys. But I do know, and I can tell you this much, and having a conversation with some folks over the weekend, Mark Pope and his staff, they are hitting the ground hard. They have been out there trying to find guys. Sean East, we talked about him. I probably should have mentioned that. I kind of buried the lead on that. He committed to Missouri over the weekend, so BYU misses out on the former JUCO player of the year. He committed to be a Missouri Tiger and play in the SEC, and that's a little bit of a gut punch because he's more of the kind of the antithesis of what Rudy was. Rudy Williams is a 1-year guy. Sean East had at least 2 years to play, would have been in BYU during their transition to the Big 12, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers in circumstances like this, and it's unfortunate that they could not get Sean East to pledge his loyalty or his commitment. Yeah, pledge his commitment to the BYU basketball program. But I can tell you this much. Mark Pope, he's looking for a new assistant coach, but at the same time, he has been working hard in the transfer portal, trying to find the right fits for his program. He knows what he's up against going into the Big 12. I don't think there's any mystery about BYU and their Big 12 membership moving forward. And they got to find some guys. But Rudy Williams, I think, could be a big addition if they can land him. But there's a lot of competition for that guy's name. You mentioned the schools we had right off the top there. Ooh, man, I don't envy trying to go up and recruit against all those teams. But we'll see how things shake out, and we'll keep you updated on anything else that comes out. And like I said, that mysterious 4-star prospect we have heard about, if I find out who it is, I'll be happy to pass it along to you guys. But I am working on that myself. So I guess I'm hitting the ground in my own right, trying to discover who the next big recruit for BYU might just be. All right, coming up here in a moment, we'll round out today's show. 2 things you need to get to ahead. Begin our countdown. Top 50 players of BYU football outside of independence. So the top 50 players in BYU football history over, 100 and some odd years. But then we're also going to do the top 50 players of independence. And top 50 is relative. I'll explain why I'm differentiating the two. We'll get to all of that, and we'll also recap the weekend that was in BYU sports. So stay tuned for all of that here in just a moment. First, though, today's show is brought to you in part by our friends over at BetOnline. Throw up that little graphic there. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports information needs. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, which are ongoing, and the start of the Major League Baseball season as well. By the way, if you guys are trying to have some fun with regards to MLB, BetOnline's got it for you guys. They got daily wagers. You can go through all the different lines, the money lines, all that type of stuff. It's really fun. But at the same time, if you like live betting, like in game, you feel like, okay, they're going to come back. Guess what? You can do that as well. BetOnline is your continued source for all the sports wagering information you can handle, from live betting, as we just talked about, to the playoffs, esports, and more. Head to their website today. That's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action available to you now. Once again, that's betonline.net. It's all courtesy of your friends at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's talk a little bit about the countdown of what we're doing here for BYU football. And I probably should have pulled up this graphic. Let me see if I can pull this up as I'm talking about it. This will be fun. We're flying off the handle all over the place today. But we're having a lot of fun with this. And I hope you guys have had fun with our countdowns in the past. And those of you who are new to the podcast, this may be a little bit of a new thing for you. What I have done in the past, I think we've done it for the last 3 or 4 years. I think it's at least 3. As we've gotten closer and closer to the football season, I have done what I call our count to get you ready for the season ahead. And obviously, I call this the 100-day countdown. It's not a perfect 100 days. Let me be very clear about that, because the way that things break down, I have weekends I don't do shows. There's some holidays during the summer, that type of stuff. And we're going to do our best to make sure you guys are apprised of everything you need to know about as a BYU fan. And we'll have some fun along the way, counting down some of the greatest players in BYU football history. I'm still trying to get this to download. But I'm going to throw up our first picture of our top 50 players of this year. Our first one, and what we're doing, by the way, is we're going to do the top 50 players of independence. So we're going to, and those will be more just the 50 best players that I can remember from my time covering BYU, because my career in sports media spans BYU's independent era. I have never covered BYU that I can recall. Maybe I did the final year of the Mountain West, but I was still a student at that point. I was an intern, so I guess I wouldn't necessarily technically count that. My professional career, covering them on a day-to-day basis, it spans independence. We're going to do the 50 players that I remember best from my time covering BYU. But today, we're going to also talk about, on the outside of that, the top 50 players for BYU of all time outside of independence. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And today's player, I'm pulling this up. Man, I am just struggling all over the place. Make sure your kids get out of your way. You can, there we go. Lakei Heimuli, number 50 on our greatest players outside of independence. So essentially, these are the greatest players that have played since the 1922 was the first official year for BYU football. But Lakei Heimuli is our selection today. And Lakei played during the heyday of BYU football, starting his career in 1983, played through 1986. He played on the 1984 national championship team, and he was one of BYU's all-timers. Many of you will recall, and those of you who are old enough to have watched BYU during this era will recall when BYU was throwing the ball all over the field, they still had a very efficient run game. And that's a big part of it was Lakei Heimuli. Very, very good player. He has a very quiet freshman season, only 91 yards overall. But from 1984 to 1986, never less than 796 yards during his 3 years remaining in his career. And more importantly, a very reliable target out of the backfield. So for his career, Lakei Heimuli had 605 total carries, 2,710 yards rushing. That's one of the greatest marks in BYU history. And to think about, he did this during the 1980s when BYU was not necessarily the world's best rushing team. They were more known for their passing. But then he also added 1,123 receiving yards on 139 receptions, had a grand total of 32 touchdowns for his career. Crazily enough, 30 of his touchdowns on the ground, just 2 through the air. And then overall for his career from scrimmage, 3,833 yards overall. So very, very impressive numbers. And Lakei, one of the all-timers, and now he does have a son playing for BYU after all of these years. Houston Heimuli, who was going to wear the number 35 this year for BYU, is Lakei's youngest son, if I'm not mistaken. and they just recently did. If you guys probably saw it, I probably should pull up that graphic as well. The really cool photos they did, recreating the truck photo that they had with Lakei back in the 80s when he was playing for BYU, and then also Houston doing it in more of a modern set, but really cool stuff all the same. And hopefully this countdown will be a lot more smoother as I get going with this. But Lakei Heimuli, number 50 on our greatest BYU players outside of Independence. So let's be clear about that. You're probably going to wonder at some point, I'm going to say a name like, well, that guy doesn't, you know what? I'll make sure to differentiate each day. We're doing 50 players outside of Independence and then 50 players inside of Independence. That is the way I've decided to do it this year. It's going to create a little more work for me, but I'm excited all the same to talk about it as we go along. All right, now to catch up on everything else going on in BYU sports news from this past weekend. Let's start off the volleyball program. They rounded out senior weekend against UCLA, who's the number one team in the country. And BYU fought hard. They went up a 1-0 on Friday night, then lost 3 straight sets to UCLA on Friday. Saturday night, it seemed like BYU had a chance to take down the top-ranked team in the country, but then they suffer a reverse sweep, losing 3-2 in 5 sets against the Bruins. So a tough senior night for BYU. Davide Gardini saved maybe his best performance for last, had 30 kills, but BYU just unable to get it done. Their overall season record is 8-16. They're now 3-9 in the MPSF, but their season is not over. You may think it would be over, but BYU will play in the MPSF men's volleyball tournament, which will begin with the quarterfinals this coming Wednesday. BYU will take on Pepperdine at 8 p.m. in Pauley Pavilion down there in Westwood at UCLA, but a big opportunity for BYU. It's a new season. They have to just kind of forget everything that happened, take the good from this year, and hopefully carry it over into this tournament. But it's just been a tough year for BYU men's volleyball. I don't necessarily think that anybody can blame them for not having a ton of hope for BYU, but we'll see how it all shakes out. Now, on to baseball, where things are looking better for the BYU men's baseball program. They came from behind for the 3rd straight game to defeat Nebraska 4-3 on Saturday. They won the 4-game series 3-1 at Haymarket Park. They took both of the doubleheader on Friday to win that series 3-1 after losing this series opener 1-0. So a great weekend for BYU baseball. Really fun to see that. They have now reached 20 wins on the year. They are 20-13 overall. They are 6-6 in West Coast Conference play. As Greg Wrubell pointed out, BYU's P5 record for this season, 10-3 against Power 5 teams. Unfortunately, BYU only has 2 more games against Power 5 opposition, one of them tomorrow against Utah in Salt Lake City, and then obviously a return date from the Utes on May 17th. But BYU does have a lot of big games coming up in West Coast Conference play, so huge opportunity for BYU baseball down the stretch run of this season. I believe Greg also pointed this out. 12 of the 19 remaining games for BYU this year are going to be home games down the stretch run at Miller Park. BYU has been 36-13 for the last 4 years at Miller Park. So huge opportunity for BYU baseball to make some hay here, make a jump up in the West Coast Conference standings. And if you are in the top 6, you will be playing in the WCC championships. So that's a big opportunity for BYU baseball. All right, final thing before we go here is congratulations to the powerhouse that is the BYU Cougarettes. They won both the Division 1A Hip Hop and the Jazz National Championships at the 2022 NDA Collegiate Cheer and Dance Championships this past, not this past week, it's about a week back. April 6th through the 10th, they were held in Daytona Beach, Florida. 22 national championships now for the BYU Cougarettes. We talk about BYU football being a powerhouse in many ways. BYU Cougarettes, they got everything on everybody else, it feels like. They have won those 22 national championships, have all come since 1997. Very impressive. Congratulations to the Cougarettes. They make seemingly a viral video every single year as they watch BYU play football. You can all think of those Cosmo videos that took the internet by storm a couple years ago. They still exist in GIF form. I can pull up my phone right now. I could probably find that GIF for you guys. I'm just looking over my phone. But regardless, congratulations to the BYU Cougarettes. It's a fantastic accomplishment for them. 22 national titles. And so 97 is the last 25 years. They pretty much averaged 1 national championship a year. That's incredible. Like, that's just the conversion there is what? Are we talking like Alabama-esque type stuff? Man, very, very impressive work. So there you go. All right, so you are up to speed. That is the Monday edition of the show. Hopefully it didn't sound too crazy. I was kind of off 3 different ways, looking at different things. I usually have a nice little cheat sheet where I can kind of go bullet point by bullet point. Did not get a chance to write that down today, but we'll do that for tomorrow's edition of the show. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow talking all things BYU. One thing I do want to talk about tomorrow, and we're going to do this throughout the rest of the week, let's talk about the depth chart for BYU coming out of spring ball. And obviously, we did not get an official depth chart from BYU. They did not send that out in a spring prospectus, that type of a deal. It's going to be my best guess at what I think for BYU's depth chart across the entire team. Offense, defense, special teams. We'll do it all. We'll carry it out throughout the week. We'll also continue our countdown. So we did number 50 of the greatest BYU football players outside of Independence today. We'll talk about one of the best 50 players in Independence on tomorrow's show as well. So we got plenty to cover on that front. And now a big thank you once again for joining us here on Locked On Cougars and making us your first listen of the day. The NFL draft is coming fast, my friends. Go make your second listen to the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker are bringing the NFL draft to life every single day. Get it free and available wherever you get your podcast. All right, until tomorrow, have a great rest of your day. This has been the Locked On Cougars podcast for April 18th, 2022, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.